Hey there again, this is Lucas Gaith. Today, Dale Clarke is with me. He is my life insurance broker with Garda Insurance. Thank you for being with us today, Dale.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Lucas.
You're very welcome. Most of the audience is hearing about dividend yielding whole life insurance for the first time. Can you give us a detailed description of it and then how families like the Rockefellers have been using it for generations?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And one of the things that's interesting when people hear the whole concept of life insurance, it immediately evokes feelings of fear about death. And people don't like thinking about their death. And so it's hard to have this conversation with most people. And a lot of people are told that the only way to buy life insurance is to buy term insurance and invest the difference, right? Use the stock market as a vehicle to grow your wealth. And so when we think about life insurance, it's like, well, that's a conversation I don't want to have, so let's push it off. Well, the way that we design these policies is the way that the Rockefellers did, the Rothschilds, the wealthiest Americans and people in the U.S., which is designed as a living benefit, right? So instead of having to buy a policy that you never benefit from, the goal of these policies is to use all of the cash while you're alive, okay? And one of the nice things about high cash value life insurance is that the money grows in an account at a guaranteed rate of 4% plus dividends on top of that, and that money can be used to create tax-free streams of income at retirement. It can be used for all sorts of things, and I'm sure we'll dive into more of those specifics later, Lucas. But this is a tool that the wealthy use to grow their money without risking it in the stock market.
Awesome. Good to hear. What are some creative ways that you've seen cash value being used?
Yeah, well, so I actually have done entire presentations on these across the U.S., and there are so many applications, that I could literally spend 2 hours with you right now just on this. In fact, in December, I recorded a webinar about 3 of the most popular ways that we can use these high cash value policies. If you'd like, if you want to give access to some of your members to those videos, I can get you a copy of, it's like an hour and a half segment about that.
Yeah, we'd love that. For sure.
That could be helpful, but there's a lot of creative ways that you can do this, okay? So the first way is using your high cash value policies as a supplemental stream of income at retirement. So this is to supplement maybe money that you have in the stock market or the real estate market or wherever else you're investing your money. You can build and design these policies to grow cash value without risking the money in the market and create tax-free checks at retirement. Now, there are specific ways to do that, but I have some pretty sizable whole life policies on myself right now. And when I reach that age, I plan on drawing out $250,000 a year in income from those policies tax-free through loans. And so that's one of the more popular ways of using these policies is kind of like a 401k, but it's not a 401k because it's not an investment. It's not at risk in the market. There's protections on the guaranteed side. So that's one of the most popular strategies.
Okay. The
The other one that we talk about in a lot of detail is that you can use your policy as kind of like your own bank, right? And there's a lot of philosophy out there, infinite banking, how to become your own bank with life insurance. There's a lot of different philosophies. And what's nice about it is that you can, as you build cash value inside your plan, instead of having to go to Chase Bank or Wells Fargo or a local bank to borrow money, you can actually go to your life insurance policy and borrow that money without the annoyance of going through a credit check or a loan application because it's your money, right? You can access that cash however you like, and you can choose to pay back the loans if you want. But the great news is you don't have to, right? And so if you miss a payment, well, the company doesn't care. They just take out whatever loan that you have against the death benefit before they pay out a benefit to your beneficiary. And so using this policy, I've bought cars. I've actually made large down payments on real estate. I've invested it in marketing. I'm writing a book right now called Budgeting Sucks. And my marketing, my advertising, I'm paying a lot of money to generate that book. That's coming out of the cash value for my life insurance policy through loans. I've used it for all sorts of, reasons and purposes, and I get to decide how to repay the loan. So that's probably one of the more, useful, pieces of these high cash value policies is the ability to create your own source of liquidity. Now, a third creative way of using these policies, and just let me state it here, I'm not an investment advisor, so I'm not advising anyone who's listening to this to go do this. But I actually use my life insurance as a funding source for college for my kids. And I have 4 kids. And so, common financial sense, or, financial advisors will say that the best way to save for that is to put money in a 529 plan or some other sort of educational savings plan because of the tax advantages and whatnot. But what they don't realize is there's all sorts of red tape that the government puts on those plans. Whereas if they're not used for that purpose, there could be penalties, there could be taxes that are assessed, and the money is not as liquid. It has to be used for the purpose intended. Well, what if your child decides not to go to college? What if your child is the next Steve Jobs and he's working out of his garage and he creates the next Apple computer, right? Well, wouldn't you like them to have access to the money that you saved, that you thought they were going to use to go to college, but instead they're going to start a business? Wouldn't that be nice to have that money fully liquid without penalties or taxes? And so I actually have 2 daughters right now that are in college. We set up policies on them in the past for the very purpose of funding their college education. And that money is available to them right now to use to pay for college. Now, the nice thing is they have scholarships and other things, so it's not the primary source of funding, but it's a wonderful supplement to a college funding strategy. So that's probably maybe a third way of utilizing the policy creatively. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Why do you think this is one of the best strategies for long-term wealth building?
Well, that's a phenomenal question. Long-term wealth building, in my mind, needs to come with economic certainty. Okay? What happens too often is that we're enamored by the sexy returns that we think that we can get in real estate or the stock market or maybe investing in business. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that with maybe some of your money, but there needs to be a core foundation built first before you go putting your money at risk. And so I recommend having about 15 to 20% of your net worth in cash value and life insurance policies, because the money inside that account has guarantees on not only the cash accumulation. We talked about 4% guarantee on cash. What is your bank paying, right? 0.1%, maybe 1% if you're with an online bank. So the guaranteed return is much higher. You also have the dividends that add to that. So, 5 to 6% total return is not unheard of in these types of products. Nothing exciting, right? But your money's not at risk in the market. So if the market goes up or if it goes down, especially, and I think, some people who are listening to this may be a little concerned that we've had like 9 years of increases in the stock market. When is it going to correct? When is there going to be a recession or whatnot? This is a great way of putting your money in a vehicle that's not subject to the downturn. If the market drops 40%, you're still guaranteed to grow by 5%. So for long-term economic growth and viability, this is the heart of a financial plan. Not the only part of your financial plan, but the heart, because this is what's going to hold everything together is the glue.
Absolutely. And I've heard a lot of people attaching whole life insurance and then applying it with a trust. Would you be able to describe a brief overview of what a trust is and then how it applies to whole life?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of different trusts that are out there. There's revocable trusts. There's life insurance trusts. There's irrevocable trusts where you can't change the parameters. And so it's important that you have a good attorney on your team to help you understand which type of trust is applicable and most valuable in your situation. But what a trust is it's a simple document that basically specifies the rules on any assets or property that you own, okay, and how to pass those on to your beneficiaries, okay. What is commonplace is, a lot of people don't set up these trusts. And so when something happens and they die, all of their assets, instead of being passed directly into the trust, they have to go through a process called probate. So that, the court system takes over. And now the judge that's in place of this has to hire a bunch of attorneys to determine who is deserved what. It talks about, if you have any children, where do those kids go? Who do they live with? The state decides for you, which is kind of a crappy thing to leave into the hands of, the justice system, right? Where do your kids go? Well, I don't know. So the justice system decides for you. Any of your assets that go into the trust now can pass over probate, so you don't have to pay the attorneys. What people don't like about probate is all of that is public knowledge. So if you were worth $10 million and you didn't have a will and a trust, well, now everybody gets to know that you're worth $10 million. And aunt and uncle and brother and sister, cousins, long lost third cousins come out of the woodworks trying to have access to your money. Trusts, if they're designed properly, are not public knowledge. So that money goes into the trust. No one knows what you have. And so it protects those assets, and it tells, the beneficiaries where the property goes. The other thing that's nice about a trust is that it helps you reduce your estate tax liability. So for the very wealthy, if you're worth, 10 million plus, and laws have changed recently, you make sure you check with local tax laws before you, work through this. But you might end up owing extra taxes at death. They call it the death tax. And so we want to make sure that you can avoid paying death taxes, and having a trust helps you avoid taxes. So for a cost of a couple $1,000s, this is, perhaps one of the most important parts of a financial plan. And when you buy a life insurance policy, you may choose to make the trust the beneficiary of the policy. You may also choose to make the trust the owner of the policy. So if you're sued, and for instance, living in the state of California, cash value and life insurance policies aren't protected very well. If the money is inside of trust, it provides another layer of protection that if you're ever sued, if you ever face a bankruptcy or lawsuit, the money is in the trust, and so it's protected.
Awesome. Do you have any closing thoughts for our viewers?
Yeah, I would say that if you've ever had a conversation with somebody, an agent in the past, or bought one of these cash value policies, and you were burned by it because you didn't understand how it was designed, or maybe your agent just didn't set it up properly, you ought to reconsider learning a little bit more about this tool as one of the wealth building cornerstones in your life. Most agents don't design the policy the proper way. And so designing the policy with lower death benefit, high cash value accumulation. So we're not necessarily focused on a huge death benefit, although death benefit's part of it. But most of the money you're paying into the policy is going toward overfunding. It allows the policy to become cash rich. It lowers fees, the commissions to the agents, and allows you to have more liquid access to your money from day one of the policy. So if you're in that camp of, I think that buying term and investing the difference is the right strategy. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about what other options that you have. Maybe your premise is incorrect, and it's important to check your premise.
Yeah, Atlas shrugged right there, right?
Exactly, correct.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like you mentioned, only about 5% of agents around the United States actually know how to set these type of policies up correctly.
True.
That's super important to get one that actually knows what they're doing. Dale is actually licensed in every single state in the United States. So if you are considering that this is one of the wealth building vehicles that you want to do, please reach out to your coach, or you can contact Dale directly at 801-304-7766. Again, it's 801-304-7766. Or email him at dale@gardainsurance.com. Dale, again, thank you so much for us being on here, and I will talk to you later, okay?
My pleasure, thanks. Good to see you, Lucas.
Take care.
Bye.